The Vedanta Society of Greater Austin. And I'll begin as always with the chant. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Om, O Mother Bhagavad Gita, we meditate on you who were made known to Partha by the Lord Narayana himself, you who were included in the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa, you the goddess who rains down the nectar of non-dualism, Advaita, through 18 chapters, you the destroyer of relative existence. We worship Krishna, world teacher, son of Vasudeva, the supreme delight of his mother Devaki, and the slayer of the demons Kamsa and Chanura. We adore that supremely blissful Madhava, by whose grace the mute are made eloquent, and the lame are enabled to cross over mountains. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So we are to begin with verse 8 of chapter 3. So chapter 3, as we saw last time, it begins with a question from Arjuna, or actually it's more of a complaint from Arjuna. Arjuna complains that Vyamishraineva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me. You, by your confusing statements, it's as if you are confusing me. By your conflicting statements, it's as if you were creating confusion for me. So please tell me that one thing which I should follow in order to attain to the good. And so he says that the cause of that confusion is that Sri Krishna at one moment praises work, and the next moment he praises knowledge. And there's a conflict between the two. So which is it that I am to follow? Should I engage myself in work, or should I engage myself in the pursuit of spiritual knowledge? Which one is right for me? So then Sri Krishna begins his answer with some very famous verses about the need for activity. Let's see, let me go back a couple of pages here to, yes, Lokes means Vividha Nishta. In olden times, I taught two different paths. The path of karma yoga for the yogis and the path of jnana yoga for those who follow the Sankhya yoga. And then he goes on to say that no one can attain to the state of worklessness, that is the state where one has no sense of activity whatsoever, because one is established in perfect stillness and peace. No one attains to that by not doing work. So the way to get to Naishkarmya Siddhi, the perfection of actionlessness, is not through not doing work. It's through doing work properly. And so then he gives other arguments saying that nobody Nahi kashti kshanamapi jatutishtatya karmakrit. No one, even for a single moment, can remain without acting. And so therefore, engage in action. And then he goes on to say that those who, controlling the outer organs, sitting quietly, while the mind thinks about outer sense objects, are hypocrites. It's better to engage the mind and the senses in rightful activity, useful, rightful, good activity, than to be a hypocrite. And through performing action in the right way, attaining to a state of inward actionlessness. If the body and mind, even if they are active, my ideal, our ideal, is to attain to a state of actionlessness where I see I do nothing. The gunas of Prakriti are acting, but I'm just the witness, or as a devotee, that God does everything and I am just the instrument of God. But I do nothing on my own. God is the doer. This is just the instrument of God. So now we come to verse 8. And verse 8 says, Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo hya karmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasidhyeda karmanaha. So niyatam karma tvam kuru. Work which is obligatory, work which you must do, then that you should do. If the work is obligatory, you should do it. Karma jyayo hya karmanaha, because action is superior to inaction. Now here, inaction means just sitting there without doing anything. It doesn't mean a high state of consciousness where you see that nothing happens, that everything is still, all is peace. There's nothing but an ocean of peace and tranquility. No, not that. He's talking about just sitting around and not doing anything. So doing something is better than doing nothing. That's the idea. So in the first part, niyatam kuru karma tvam. O Arjuna, do that which is obligatory action, your obligatory duties. So what does obligatory mean? In olden times, traditional times, and to some extent even in Western countries in traditional times as well, and as well as in India, what we were to do in life was prescribed. That is, the roles in society were well defined. They were categorized depending on your station in life and your age and all of that. Your duties were relatively clear. And so to speak of your obligatory duties, you didn't need to say anything else, because you just go to a teacher, you go to an elder, you go to the scriptures, and they say this, these are your duties, and this is the way you should do them. That system all over the world has fallen apart now. There aren't people who are born into a trade and who carry that on because it's their ancestral trade, and what you do, how you do it is very traditional, so you just do it. And also the scriptural system of religious duties has fallen apart as well. In the Vedas and the later Dharma Shastras and scriptures, later scriptures as well of Hinduism, it was laid out what you were to do according to your stage and position in life. The religious duties that you were to do. Sacrifices, religious performances, ceremonies and things that were to be done. And so again, all of that was quite clear. Nowadays, who is there in India who does Vedic karmas? Very, very few people follow the Vedic, even among religious Hindus, very few follow the Vedic tradition. Very few follow the classical Hindu traditions. Most have to go to the office, have responsibilities at work, to society, to the family, that are based on the modern culture rather than on the scriptural traditions. And so now we have to understand our obligatory duties in a different way. We have to understand them in a more free-form way. That is, not in a scripturally prescribed way. There's value in that. there was value in the traditional way also, because you didn't have to think about it. You did what had always been done, and so you just sort of followed a well-worn path in society. And as long as you didn't go against that, you were doing your duty. But now that's not the case. And the advantage now is that we have to think about what we're doing. We can't do things unconsciously if we want to grow spiritually. We can't just follow the leader or just follow the worn path in society without thinking about it. Now we have to look and see, what are my real responsibilities? Who are the people that that are dependent on me? That if I don't take care of them, then I'm not a good person. So let me see, who are the people I'm responsible for? Who are the people I'm responsible to? What is my work? What work do I do? That nowadays, that may change several times in your lifetime. It doesn't matter. What is it that I do, and what does it mean to do what I do well? And so we take to our obligatory duties not from largely not from an outside prescription. Though if we have a job, there's some things that are expected of us that we have to do if we want to keep the job. But largely, we have to figure things out for ourselves. They're only very broad guidelines. So for instance, now if you go for an interview for a job, depending on the job, they may ask you questions like, have you ever stolen anything worth more than $25 from any past employer? And so that's a pretty low bar. It means that you can steal little things and they're not going to bother with that because they figure that everybody does it. so why bother with that? Just don't steal big things. So we have to not take that as obligatory. Okay, I won't steal big things, but I will still steal small things. No, we have to have a higher bar for ourselves. And so again, there's some things that are obligatory in the outer world even now, but those are mostly low-level bars that we have to cross. So we have to be, as spiritual aspirants, be more particular that no, I won't steal anything. If I take anything that's not mine, I will do it with the permission of the owner. Or if I have to borrow something when the owner's not there, then I will tell them afterwards that I borrowed it. Just because I'm not, by principle, I'm not going to take that which is not mine. Swami Vivekananda mentioned in one of his talks in America, one of his early talks in America, that even now in India, he said, at that time, later it wasn't so true even in India, but at his time he said, even now in India, if someone leaves a bag of gold on the street, that many people won't touch it because it's not theirs. Of course, I wouldn't do that nowadays in Calcutta or Delhi, but at that time it was, the society was more traditional and people had that sense that no, stealing is not to be done. And so obligatory actions means first find out who is dependent upon me. Who am I responsible to? What am I expected to do? And how do I do it in a good and honorable way? And then I can figure out what my obligatory actions are. And then if I take initiation or something, or I come to spiritual life, then another obligatory action is added that every day I should spend at least some time. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. If you can do a lot, good. But at least a little time we have to spend every day in japa and meditation. At least to fulfill the minimum, we have to do that every day. So that's an added responsibility that we take on if we take initiation. And then we may also take up a very good practice, which we can make obligatory on ourselves, of every day at least read a little bit from a holy book. So many people keep a spiritual book by their bedside, and even if they don't have time during the day to do something, at least before going to bed, let me read a paragraph. Let me at least do something. So again, find out what your obligatory actions are. So coming back to the verse, niyatam karma tvam kuru. Do that which is obligatory action. Karma hi akarmanaha jaya. Action is better than not doing anything. Better to do something than to do nothing. And then the second half, which we haven't gone over yet, Sharira yatra api chate na prasidhyed akarmanaha. That because even the maintenance of your body, Sharira yatra api, even the maintenance of your body, na prasidhyed akarmanaha, will not be successful through inaction. So even to maintain your physical body, you have to act. So as he said in the earlier verse, 3 verses earlier, I believe, he said that no one, no one can remain without work even for a second. And so even to maintain your body, you have to do things. And so join yourself to that which should be done. Avoid that which should not be done. Do that which should be done. Because it's the only way to live. How can you maintain yourself if you don't do something? So even to eat, you have to prepare the food. If you have somebody prepare the food for you, you have to lift the food to your mouth. You have to work in order to make money to pay bills. You have to take care of those that you are responsible for. All of these things you have to do just in order to maintain life. And so do the things that are obligatory. So then we come to verse 9, where he begins several verses on another theme, or a related, but extension of the theme. Yajñarthat karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhanaha tarartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So yajñarthat karmano anyatra loko ayam karma bandhanaha. So doing work for any reason other than as a sacrifice. Yajñartha, for the sake of sacrifice. Anyatra, for any other reason. Doing work for any other reason in this world is the cause of bondage by action. So the loko ayam karma bandhana, this world is bound by action which is done for a reason other than a sacrifice. So the simple English would just be, do all of your work from the standpoint of sacrifice, because work done in any other way is the cause of bondage. So what does that mean? Sacrifice is one of the very important concepts in Hindu religion from the Vedic times. So what does sacrifice mean? When I first joined the order in Chicago, then Swami Bhashyananda, who was the head of the center, he would, when he would give us classes and so forth, he would talk about sacrifice as some glorious, wonderful thing. And that was very confusing to me, because I had grown up thinking that, yes, sacrifice is good, it's moral, it's a good thing to do, but sacrifice means giving up something that you really want because somebody else deserves it more than you do. And so sacrifice, as I had learned it through stories told and so forth, was that, yes, how wonderful it is when somebody gives up something for the sake of another who needs it more. But the moral always seemed to be, especially to a child's mind, was that other people deserve things more than you do. So give good things to them. And so that, of course, was a painful message. And so the idea of sacrifice, oftentimes in the West, is associated with that sense of loss. And here I saw this Swami talking about sacrifice as some glorious, grand, and inspiring thing. And so again, I was confused. It took me time before I learned why it was that sacrifice meant something quite different to him from what it meant to me. And strangely, what helped me understand it was a cartoon. The cartoon was a beautiful animated cartoon done by Japanese artists in collaboration with Indian writers on the Ramayana. And in watching this animated cartoon of the Ramayana, it's a beautiful thing. A devotee who saw me speaking about this on the internet, on YouTube, found the cartoon and sent me a video of it, so I have it now. But it's a beautifully done animated movie. And in that it opens with Valmiki performing a yajna. And so he's sitting in front of the yajna, pouring oblations into it with chanting and everything. So there's this beautiful fire on a properly constructed geometrical altar out in the beautiful Himalayan forest, the beautiful Vedic chanting and all of that. So then I thought, this is the image that the Swami had in mind when he spoke about sacrifice. That's why he spoke of it as something glorious, because it was this offering of oblations into a fire with great devotion and the chanting of Vedic mantras, etc. But of course, the idea of sacrifice goes much deeper than that. The aesthetics of the scene, it goes much deeper than that. The idea, the Vedic idea, and the later classical Hindu idea, is that everything in this universe is of the nature of sacrifice, starting from the creation of the world itself. How does it go? Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sabhumim Vishwato Vritva Atyatishtaddashangulam Purusha Evedagam Sarvam, etc. The Purusha Suktam in the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda says that in the beginning there was the Supreme Purusha, which stands for God, the Supreme Being, God. And out of God, the various limbs and parts of God's, this Purusha's body, this person's body, the divine being's body, came the different aspects of the universe. People and animals and plants and everything came out of the very being of God. And so it was the sacrifice of the divine being which brought this universe of multiplicity into being. So this universe is the sacrifice of the cosmic unity. There's also a Vedic verse which is Ekoham Bahusyam Prajayeya. I am one, said the Supreme Being, Prajapati, the grandfather, meaning the Supreme Being, God. I am one, Bahusyam, I wish to be many. Prajayeya, I body myself forth into multiplicity. So I sacrifice the unity of my being into multiplicity. Now, of course, the Vedanta philosophy says that the divine being never actually became multiplicity. The divine unity is always there, even when we see multiplicity. The fact is the unity of the divine being, but it appears in multiplicity. And so the idea was that this multiplicity came by the sacrifice of the divine being. The idea of sacrifice and tapas, or tapasya, tapasya, those are closely linked. Tapas, also what we usually translate as austerity, means self-control which is productive of spiritual heat, spiritual energy, which can be directed for creative purposes. And so it's also said that the divine being, when it wanted to create the universe out of its own being, the divine being performed tapas, performed austerity in order to generate the heat, in order to create this, this universe. So sacrifice and tapas are tied together. Tapas became such a sacred concept from an early time in Indian religion, from the Vedic time all the way through to the present, that it was believed that through tapas anything could be done. And so you see in the stories of Shiva that said that Shiva, Uma wanted Shiva and performed sacrifice and performed tapas. And it was out of that tapas that she was able to win the hand of Shiva as her husband. The Shiva, the great yogi, the great brahmacharin, who is the symbol of the absolute, who has no connection to anything, who lives in the cremation ground, is unmindful of the whole world. But through tapas, the Divine Mother was able to attract his mind and enter into union with him. And so the idea is that through tapas, everything is possible. And so that means also through sacrifice, everything is possible, because the very nature of the universe is sacrifice. If I'm a child, I remember in my own childhood, when I first had to go to school, I was so resistant to it. Some kids are eager to go to school. I wasn't at all, because for me, it meant leaving home, leaving my toys, having to go somewhere or do something that I didn't want to do, with all of these strange kids that I didn't know. But I had to sacrifice that in order to go to school, because otherwise I couldn't develop. And then I had to sacrifice kindergarten to go into the first grade. And so we go on with the sacrifices. The youth has to sacrifice their toys in order to take up their studies. The student has to sacrifice things that they would like to do just for fun, because they have an exam coming. They have to study for it. A person, when they get married, they have to sacrifice so many things in order to get married. Marriage is a tremendous sacrifice. And then if you have children, that's an even greater sacrifice. So many things you have to give up for the sake of caring for your children. And so the idea is that at every stage of life, we have to sacrifice one thing in order to come to the next stage of development. But the idea of sacrifice is that you give something up. That's the sacrifice part. But you give it up because you get something else. You give it up because there are greater things to be had. And so it's said in a verse that Swami Vivekananda quoted here in this country. He said that for the sake of the family, one gives up one's own self-interest. That is, for the welfare of the family, I want to do this, but it's not good for the family, so I give up my self-interest in order to help the family. For the sake of the village, you give up the self-interest of the family. That is, that's a larger interest. So in order to help the village, you have to sacrifice some of your family life. For the sake of the country, you give up the village. You sacrifice the village. For the sake of the world, you sacrifice your country. And for the sake of everything, one sacrifices the whole world. That is, one renounces the whole world in order to attain to everything. That is, realization of Brahman, which is everything. And so at every step, we have to sacrifice that which is lower in order to achieve the higher. And that sacrifice always involves some regret, some pain, or something. But if we can learn that sacrifice is the nature of life itself, then we enter into it willingly. We no longer think about what I'm giving up. We realize that at death, everything is going to be taken away from me. So why be so attached to things now? If at death everything is going to be taken, why should I hold on so tightly to things now? Be ready to sacrifice, be ready to give up. And what makes sacrifice glorious is the power of love. If you have children and you love your children, then you don't think about, oh my God, now that all these little things are running around the house, I can't lead my life the way I want to. I have to give up so many things. Life is no fun anymore. I've got all these little kids running around and I have to pay attention to them. Oh, I hate my life now. No, if you love your kids, you don't even think about the things that you're giving up. I haven't had a television since I was in my teens, but occasionally I've been somewhere where I see something on television. And so once, some years ago, there was advertisement on television that I would see occasionally when I, again, just happened to be where a television was playing. And it was a yogurt commercial. I forget which brand, whether it was Danone or what brand of yogurt, it doesn't matter. But the advertisement was a woman who was giving things to her kids, feeding her kids, but she said, but this is for me, and I hide it. I put it in the refrigerator hidden so my kids won't find it because it's for me, meaning it's so good, I'm going to enjoy it. Now that good mother or father, are they actually going to hide good things from their kids because they don't want their kids to find it because it's so good, I want to eat it by myself? No. You think, oh, this is so good, I want to share it with my kids. Come, here, take some of this. This is so good. So it's love that makes sacrifice easy. If I love another person that I have to take care of, then yes, it may be difficult. It may be full of frustrations. It may be exhausting. That is true. But if I love the person, I go through that anyway. And I go through it willingly. Maybe I have to do it, but I also do what I have to do willingly because I love the person. And so the more we can grow in love, the more we can grow in appreciation of others, the more we can grow in the spirit of sacrifice. So anyway, coming back to this this verse, this world is bound by action other than that done for sacrifice. Therefore, perform actions for the sake of that, O son of Kunti, free from attachment. So yes, the second part of the verse is Taratham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. So Taratham karma kaunteya, do that action, O Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, do that action, mukta sangha, or do action for that purpose, that is for the purpose of sacrifice, mukta sangha, without attachment. Do all that you have to do it in the spirit of sacrifice, without any attachment. So that's the idea, that because this world is bound, or action that is not done for the sake of sacrifice binds us. Therefore, do all action with a sense of sacrifice, without attachment to the results. So those two things go together. Doing things without attachment and doing them with the spirit of sacrifice. So the more that we can imbibe that spirit of sacrifice, the more we'll begin to see the beauty of sacrifice itself. How it is that the spring sacrifices itself into summer. Summer sacrifices itself into the fall sacrifices itself into the winter. The tree sacrifices itself into the seed, and the seed sacrifices itself back into another tree. And so all of life goes one thing giving up its form in order to take on the next form that is necessary. Childhood giving way to youth, youth giving way to adulthood, adulthood giving way to old age giving way to death, and death giving way to birth again. And so everything is following this cyclical nature of sacrifice, one thing going into another. I eat plants, and if I'm not a vegetarian, I eat animals also. That is, I sacrifice them into this body, plants and perhaps animals. But then this body itself is going to be a sacrifice for the sake of lower beings. Of course, if you're cremated, then that doesn't happen. It's sacrificed into the fire. But in countries where the body is buried, then eventually the body becomes a sacrifice to bacteria and parasites and so forth. The body is gradually reduced back to its elements. So everything takes birth and grows and develops, and then it contracts, and then it disappears and goes back into its constituent elements. And so all of that is a sacrifice. So again, this world is bound by action other than that done for sacrifice. Therefore, perform actions for the sake of that, O son of Kunti, free from attachment. So then verse 10 continues this idea. Sahayagnya praja srishtva puro vacha prajapatihi anena prasavishyadhvam eshavostvishta kamadhuk. So now he begins a line of thought which is similar to what he was criticizing in verse 2 when he spoke about the Vedas belonging to the three gunas. So you, O Arjuna, be beyond the three gunas, because the Vedas, the rituals and so forth of the Vedas, they're just concerned with matters of the three gunas. You must go beyond that. But here he comes back and gives a place for that, the rituals and the sacrifices and so forth of the Vedic period. Because remember, the Gita was is told from the Vedic period. The Vedas were still, it was still the Vedic period when the Gita was given. So here, Sahayagnya praja srishtva puro vacha prajapati. Here, prajapati, pura uvacha. In ancient times, prajapati, that is the grandfather, the lord of creatures, the creator, spoke. Or no, first let me start with the first part of the verse. Sahayagnya praja srishtva, having created living beings together with sacrifice. So all of us have, all living beings were created together with sacrifice by God. When God created the universe, when God projected the universe out of its own being, created living beings and the process of sacrifice. And so then Puro Vacha Prajapati, so Prajapati then said in ancient times, Anena Prasavishyadhvam, by this, that is by sacrifice, multiply yourselves, multiply yourselves. That is, go out and people the earth, as it says in the Jewish and Christian Bible. Esha vo ishta kamadhuk, because this sacrifice is the wish-fulfilling cow for your fulfilling your desires. So the kamadhuk, that you know, the wish-fulfilling cow, the actual wish-fulfilling cow, the story is told that you could take as much milk from the wish-fulfilling cow as you wanted. That it would never be empty of milk. So you could feed an army with the milk from the wish-fulfilling cow. But here he's using it in a figurative sense, Sri Krishna. He means that which gives you that which you want. So that's why he says, Ishta Kamadhuk, the Kamadhuk of your desires. That is, it grants you desires. So more like the wish-fulfilling tree, Kalpataru, the wish-fulfilling tree. So by this process of sacrifice, multiply yourselves, and this sacrifice will be your wish-fulfilling cow. So the running translation, Prajapati, creating of your beings who coexist with sacrifice, said, by this you multiply. Let this yield you covetable objects of desire. So then he continues in verse 11. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayanduvaha parasparam bhavayanta shreya paramavapsyata. So devan bhavayata anena devan bhavayata te deva vaha bhavayantu. So may the God, may you entertain the gods by this sacrifice. That is, may you nourish the gods by sacrifice, by giving, by making offerings to the gods, by being, by making your actions sacrificial, making your actions offerings to the gods. Te deva bhavayantu vaha. And may the gods nourish you through this as well. So may you nourish the gods, and may the gods nourish you through this mutual act of sacrifice. So again, this was a Vedic idea. It's an idea that you also find among many of the American Indian tribes, the Native American tribes, like the Hopis and others. Their belief was, and is, that if they don't perform the proper ceremonies, that the world itself, the falling of the rains and the succession of the seasons, that the world itself will fall into chaos. It's the act of ceremony, which is sacrifice. It's the act of sacrifice which keeps the world order maintained. And so that was the Vedic idea as well, that the clouds pour down their rain in time, the crops yield their grain in time. Everything happens according to natural cycles. And how are the natural cycles maintained? The idea was that they're maintained by the gods. So the lower gods in the Indian tradition were like in the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim world, the lower gods were replaced by the idea of angels. That is, those who carry out the cosmic functions under the guidance of the supreme God. They carry out the cosmic functions. And so the idea was that everything in the universe happens according to a cosmic rhythm because there are conscious forces, controlling forces behind all of the cosmic activities. And so these cosmic conscious forces behind the cosmic activities are the devas. And so by sacrificing to them, they are pleased, and then they please us by maintaining the cosmic order. So that was the idea behind this these shlokas. So by parasparam bhavayanta shreya paramavapsita, by supporting each other, by entertaining each other, by nourishing each other, you will attain to the highest. So through sacrifice, by proper sacrifice, then you will attain to the highest, Shreya, the Nishreyasa or the Shreya. So by this sacrifice, entertain the gods and let the gods entertain you. And of course here entertain means to nourish, to support, etc. Entertaining each other, you will both attain supreme good. Shreya param avapsyata. You will attain to the supreme good. Then verse 12 says, Ishtan bhogan hivo deva dasyante yajna bhavitaha tairdattana pradayebhyo yo bhunte stena eva saha. So Ishtan bhogan hivo deva dasyante yajna bhavitaha. So the gods being entertained by the sacrifices which you, O Arjuna, or here it's not Arjuna speaking, here Prajapati is still speaking. Prajapati, God at the beginning of creation, is still speaking to the Praja, that is to the creatures, to humans and other creatures. He's still speaking to them. So he's saying that the gods receiving these offerings of desired objects, or no, I'm sorry, the gods being pleased by sacrifice will bestow on you the desired objects. Ishtan bhogan, the bhogas that are ishta, the desired enjoyments. So if you sacrifice to the gods will give back to you the desired enjoyments. One who enjoys enjoys the things given by the gods without giving back in sacrifice is indeed a thief. Stena eva saha. He is indeed a thief who enjoys the things of life without giving back to the gods. Albert Einstein famously said, he's often quoted, and it's a wonderful statement. He said that every day I am conscious of the fact that the research which I do in the laboratory at Princeton, the advanced lab at Princeton, every day I'm conscious of the fact that the work that I do is made possible by the sacrifice of many, many people. Meaning the people who clean the streets, the people who collect the garbage, the people who grow the crops, people who transport the crops to grocery stores, the people who manage the grocery stores, the clerks who sell the groceries, the whole network of an infinite number of social functions that are performed. It's that that allows me the freedom to work in my laboratory on fundamental physics. Fundamental physics, how could that go on? How could we do research into such things? How could we have temples and other things like that? How could we have art museums and artists and musicians and things? If there weren't this vast network of people sacrificing themselves for the common good. We have streets, we have fire departments, we have police departments, we have public works, we have the water system, the sewage system, we have the network of enterprises. All of these things forming an intensely complex society. And because of that, I can lead the life that I lead. And so Einstein said, I am every day conscious of that fact. And so that meant that to be conscious of it means to be grateful to all of those whose sacrifice is allowing me the freedom to do my research. And so we should imbibe that attitude as well. When we pay taxes, we should realize that that too is a sacrifice. Now it's true, sometimes you don't like what tax dollars are spent on, some of the things tax dollars are spent on, but that we don't have individual control over that I'm giving my taxes, but I only want you to spend it on this, not on that, because I don't like that. Well, that won't work. So we realize that we have to pay taxes. Why? Because we are dependent on so many things that are provided for us. So that is our paying back our dues to society for the things that society provides to us. And so that also is a sacrifice. There was this idea that arose in the 1980s during the time of Ronald Reagan. He was the one that, as far as I know, the first who gave voice to these particular words. Maybe he took those words from someone else, but the idea was that the government takes your money out of your pocket. That's your hard-earned money, and the government steals it from you. No, 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 no. That's a terrible idea, to think that all of the money that I earn is just for me. Who then is going to pay for the streets? Who then is going to pay for the electrical grid? Who is going to pay for the water system, for the sewage system? Who's going to protect people? Who is going to protect houses from fires? Who is going to do the 10,000 things the services that are provided for us? So in paying taxes, we're offering our sacrifice in recognition of the fact that I receive so many benefits from society, I have to give something back. So again, let me state, so there's no confusion, that's not denying the fact that that tax money is sometimes misused and sometimes is used for bad purposes. That I will admit. But when we don't have control over that, we can at least recognize that no, I have to give back to society. So paying my taxes is a sacrifice, and let me make that sacrifice willingly. Let me not do it unwillingly. And certainly let me not have that extremely selfish and self-centered idea, which is so common nowadays, that all of the money is my money and the government is reaching in my pocket and taking it. It's my money and the government steals it from me. No, 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 no. Where would you be without all of the services of the government? That's a horrible idea. And it's an idea usually that the richer a person is, the more they feel the government is stealing their money, in spite of the fact that the richer you are, the more you have gotten from society. And so the more you need to pay back to society. So being entertained by sacrifices, the gods will surely bestow on you the desired enjoyments. He who enjoys what is given by them without offering it to them is indeed a thief. So again, remember that everything that comes to us as a gift, and I have to be ready to give back. That is only right, but it's not just that it's right. not just that it's necessary. It's something that I should learn to do willingly because it frees me. It gives me the spirit of non-attachment. This is not mine. I give it back. It's been lent to me. I give it back. As Sri Ramakrishna said, even the children that you have, your own children, those are given to you by God. They're not your children. They're God's children, and they've been given to you to take care of. And so everything in life is like that. So then we come to verse 13. Let's see. I'll finish with verse 13 for today. Yajnashishtashinas santo muchyante sarvakil vishayehi bhunjate te tvagham papa ye pachantyatmakaranat. Yajnashishtashinas santo muchyante sarvakil vishayehi. Those who eat the leftovers from sacrifice, that is the prasad, the blessed food from sacrifice. And this means not just in a literal sense, but also in a figurative sense, that if everything that you do is a sacrifice, then the food that you eat is automatically the result of sacrifice. Because the food that you eat, that comes because of the work and offerings that you give to the world. And so those who do everything with the spirit of sacrifice, they eat the remnants of sacrifice. That is, they eat the prasada of sacrifice, muchyante sarvakil vishehi, and they are thereby freed from all evil. So if you eat nothing but prasad, not meaning just going to a temple and eating prasad every day, but if the food that you eat comes to you because of your sacrificial attitude towards life, then you'll be freed from all evil, because you're doing action not from a standpoint of selfish attachment. You're doing it from a spirit of sacrifice, and thereby participating in this grand sacrifice, which is the world. So, and then bhunjate te tvagham papa ye pachanti atmakaranat. But ye pachanti atmakaranat, those who cook only for themselves. So here he's talking about eating the remnants of the sacrifice. Here he says, so he continues with the eating. So those who cook only for themselves, te tu agam papa bhunjate, or te ye papa te agam bhunjate. Those who cook only for themselves, they eat sin. So the good who partake of the remnants of the sacrifice are freed from all sins. But those sinful persons, the papa, who cook for their own sake, bhunjate te tvagham papa, partake of sin. So that's the idea. That, whatever we do, we should do with the spirit of sacrifice. And even when we cook food, we should not think that I'm cooking this just for myself because I want something really good and I don't care about anybody else. Yes, if I live alone, then of course I have to cook for myself. But let me not think of it as cooking for my own selfish enjoyment. Let me cook and eat well, eat nourishing food, eat tasty food, pure food, to nourish the mind and body and so forth, but so that I can be of use to the whole world. In growing up in a Christian family, there was a blessing that would often be said at the time of eating. Let's see if I can remember it. Bless this food to the use of our bodies, and us to thy service. So bless us to thy service. So may this food be for the use of this body, and may I be of use to you, O Lord. So that's the idea. So even if I live alone and I cook for myself, let me not think that, again, like the woman in the advertisement who was hiding the best thing in the refrigerator just for herself so her kids could never see it. Let us think that, no, whatever I do, let me, whatever I eat, let me do it. That also is a sacrifice. Brahmarapanam, Brahmahavir, no Brahmanahutam, so that I will have the strength and the energy to be of service to others. So with that, I will stop here. If there,
Please.
Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutastun Bandi Divyaistavai Devais Vedai Sangapada Kramopanishadair Gayandiyam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyandiyam Yogino Yasyandam Navidu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. We bow to that Supreme Being, whom Brahma and other gods praise with divine hymns, whose glories the singers of the Sama hymns sing through the Vedas and Upanishads, whom the yogis see with their minds absorbed in that through meditation, and whose end or beginning neither the gods nor demigods know. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Om peace, peace, peace be unto us all.